to introduce.
I was just going to start the recording because I had paused it. Okay, are we ready to go then?
I think we are.
Okay, great. I think, hi everyone. I'm Christine Wagoner from the Cure GM1 Foundation, and my daughter Iris also has juvenile GM1 gangliosidosis. And I'm really excited to be with you today to learn more about the phase 3 Azafaros clinical trial. And this webinar will be covering the study, the Navigate study, and the GM1, GM2 portion of the trial. This is a learning process. Every clinical trial is different. We have enabled the Q&A, but we disabled, actually, I see a chat. Maybe that's only for presenters, but we're asking you to use the Q&A and chat has been disabled for this webinar to protect people's privacy. So I'm also pleased that Kathy Flynn from NTSAD and Dr. Caroline Hastings are here, and Aidan Gill is here to answer questions from Azafaros as well. So I'll hand it over to Kathy.
Sure. Thank you, Christine. I certainly echo your words of welcome. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us to learn more about Azafaros' Navigate program. As Christine said, it's a groundbreaking phase 3 clinical trial testing nizubaglustat in children with late infantile and juvenile forms of GM1, GM2 gangliosidosis and Niemann-Pick type C. At NTSAD, where families are certainly the center of everything that we do, we're very excited about the promise that lies ahead. Today, you're going to hear in-depth details about the Navigate trial, learn about the eligibility criteria, and what participation entails. And we really hope that this webinar offers clear and helpful information. And if you or your loved one meet the criteria and you are interested in learning more, we encourage you to discuss the trial with your healthcare provider. And as always, Becky and Deanna, NTSAD's amazing family services team, are always available to support you. So please reach out if you have questions. And I'm sure if members of the Cure GM1 Foundation have questions, they can certainly reach out as well to Christine or anyone on the Cure GM1 Foundation team. We thank you for being with us and for your connection to our rare disease community. So at this time, we're going to continue on, and it's my pleasure to turn over the webinar to Dr. Caroline Hastings. Dr. Hastings is a hematologist oncologist and neuro-oncologist who cares for children with blood diseases, including blood cancers. She also cares for adults with lysosomal storage disorders, and her research in rare diseases includes projects on relapsed leukemia, brain tumors, and Niemann-Pick type C disease. She works on clinical trials for drugs that show promise for treating NPC and serves on related advisory boards. And in her spare time, Dr. Hastings enjoys gardening and animals. Dr. Hastings?
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my slide deck at this time. Oops, what happened to it? Okay. Let me see. I'm not sure why it's not showing up here. Were you able to see that yet?
Not yet.
Nope.
All right, let's see. If I can't get this up for some reason, Christina might just have you pull it up.
Oh, sure. Okay. Here we go.
Great, thank you. So today, on behalf of Azafaros, I'm going to introduce to you the new phase 3 clinical trial called the Navigate study. Go ahead. And next slide, please. And so just as you know, these slides were created by Azafaros for me to share with you today. And I will be one of the principal investigators in the site here in California, one of the US sites designated. So today on our agenda, we're going to talk about the compound isabaglastat, talk about the mode of action as well as the formulation, review prior clinical data from the Rainbow phase 2 study, and then specifically talk about the study design as well as the criteria for inclusion and exclusion on the Navigate study. Next slide. So this is there's a lot going on this slide, and this is meant to show us kind of all at once what we think the actual mechanism of action is for the drug. It does appear to be somewhat unique and have a dual mode of action. It is known to reduce the activity of 2 different enzymes. And in the middle, there's this capsule here, and GCS and NLGase, and these are the 2 enzymes. GCS is glucosylceramide synthase, and NLGase is the non-lysosomal glucosylceramidase. So these 2 is thought to have an impact on. So in the middle here, we have 3 swimming pools, and you're probably wondering what this means. So this is meant to be a metaphor of a functioning lysosome. A lysosome is an important cellular element that is responsible for helping to ingest and then transport cholesterol and sphingolipids throughout the cell to get them to the areas it needs to be in. So on the left side, we see a nice swimming pool with clear blue water. This is felt to be a normal functioning lysosome. And below it is a cartoon depiction of what happens in the cell. Unesterified cholesterol as well as other sphingolipids are ingested into the cell. They are processed through, it's called the endosome, and then the lysosome. And the lysosome then helps transport these very needed sphingolipids and cholesterol to other cellular components, including the Golgi complex, the endoplasmic reticulum, and also to the membrane. And it gets it also going outside of the cell to areas that it needs to be in. In the middle diagram, we see, well, in this particular case, MPC, but this could also represent GM1. And again, these very important lipids are ingested. They go into the lysosomes, but because of the dysfunctional enzymes, they are not fully processed or transported in the way that they need to be, and we get backup of these contents. And the backup not only prevents the cell from getting these critical elements to other parts of the cell for survival, but can also do inherent damage to the cell. When we treat the lysosome, it starts to clear up. And in fact, we're able to remove the blockades and be able to then process these lipids normally. So down below, you can see for glucosylceramide synthase that there's an early blockage that the isabaglastat overcomes, and then you don't have the accumulation and backup of all of these substrates to the right that then impact the function of the cell. And it's also hypothesized that by also affecting the second enzyme, the NLGase, that this will also have a beneficial impact on the well-being of the cell and potentially anti-inflammatory benefits. Next slide. So we know that in the prior studies in the phase 1 and in the Rainbow phase 2 study, the drug was administered in capsules that needed to be swallowed whole. They were small, but still did require that intact capsule. In the Navigate study, I think this is going to be a lot simpler for many of our patients that may have difficulties with swallowing. These are dispersible tablets. So they start to disintegrate into the mouth, and you can feel like kind of the grains in them, and then you can swallow it with your saliva or by just taking a drink of water. It also can easily be put into an NG or a G tube. Next slide. So the prior study, the Rainbow study, evaluated safety, tolerability, as well as pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics of this compound. So the pharmacokinetics refer to the concentration of the drug that you can measure, and the pharmacodynamics look at what the impact is on other substrates, for example. So the main study was 12 weeks long. Patients were randomized 1 to 1 to 1. So that means 30% receive placebo, so the capsule they received did not have drug. 30% or 33% received a high dose and 33% a low dose. And a total of 13 participants were in the study, 7 with GM2 and 6 with NPC. Now, at this time, GM1 patients were not included because they just didn't have enough results as of yet from the pilot study and preclinical data. But there is more information now that is going to allow them to participate in the next study. Of note, after the 12-week study, during which times safety and clinical assessments were performed, then patients were able to go into an extension study and have continued access to the drug. The patients that were on placebo were then randomized to the high dose or low dose because we just didn't really know what was better, but they got access to the drug at this time and continued for the next year. And there were a total of 11 patients that participated in this aspect of the study. The next slide, please. So the study was performed in Brazil, and as mentioned, included NPC and GM2 patients. And it was not specifically powered, with not nearly enough patients or length of time to look at what the clinical impact or the efficacy was. However, the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics did give a lot of good information as to what the best dose would be to trial in a phase 3. So the 11 participants that went on to the expanded aspect of the study, at least 11, I should say, received 9 months of treatment, and others potentially more. Patients on the study were over 12 years of age at the time. Next. So looking at some of the safety effects, it really appeared to look very safe, and as such has been deemed to have a positive safety profile. The most frequent adverse event, or AE, as shown here, was actually skin dryness, which can be very much alleviated with creams. And it occurred in both the high and the low doses. But when we look at this middle slide, when we ask principal investigators to tell us if they think that any of the side effects, whether it be skin dryness, headaches, or others, do they think it's related to the study drug, for example, then they were to acknowledge that. And you can see that maybe there are a lot of adverse events that are not study related or not drug related. And that's because you have to report every medical condition during the course of a study, even if you get a viral illness. As far as the severity, the majority of side effects were mild and some were moderate, and none were severe, leading to the need to discontinue. Next. So one of the questions that was asked as a primary objective with respect to safety was, is there an impact on seizures? Certainly we know that patients can develop seizures, patients with GM2 as well as NPC. There were only 3 patients with GM2 that came on at the time that had a seizure frequency of already averaging about 1 a day. And it didn't appear that there was any significant impact on this, but we have to look at the fact that there's only 3 patients. It certainly did not increase seizure frequency or cause that kind of central nervous system irritability. There was one patient who had a change in their seizure medications, and maybe there was a slight increase in seizures after that, but you have to consider that drug change as well. So here there's no significant and certainly no harmful concern at this time. Next slide. So as well, what was very important was looking at some biochemical changes or pharmacodynamics. And one of the endpoints was looking at reducing glucosylceramide to see if indeed the enzyme was being impacted, because we suspect that the drug inhibits it, therefore there should be a change. And looking at the levels in the blood, for patients with receiving the high dose of the drug, which is the dark blue, there was an 88% reduction, which is quite significant. And for patients that received the low dose, there appeared to be a 64% reduction. Now, there's also a mild reduction in placebo. We can't really explain that, but it's certainly qualitatively very different than what was experienced with patients on the drug. There was no data that looked at the impact of or the change in the NLGAs at this time, no CSF data. Next slide, please. So also, there are a number of biomarkers that we're aware of in these diseases, specifically those that are related to those that have neurocognitive change. For example, neurofilament light chain, abbreviated as NFL, PPCS, previously known as lyso 509, and also the lyso GM2 and GM2. But when we look at, again, this is color coded with the high dose dark blue, the low dose green, and the placebo kind of a turquoise. There are some reductions, for example, that you can see in these patients with lyso GM2. There's a little more variability in some, and the PPCS really not much change. But what's very difficult to determine here is how significant this is with very few patients. So we can't really make a statement at this time that there's a significant change between the patients that received the drug and those that did not. But going forward in a much larger study, we should be able to make that analysis. Next. So one of the exploratory objectives, which is something that was, not the study is not powered for it, but we wanted to collect the data on, was looking at the SARA test, which is an ataxia clinical tool that looks at gross motor, fine motor, speech, for example. And doing these clinical assessments on patients, ideally at baseline and then at 12 months. Here we have some data that shows some encouragement. Again, not enough patients, and not all patients, as I understand it, had data collected at baseline. But we could see in the green here that some patients improve in diseases that you don't really expect that to happen. And as well, we did see some patients worsen, and there were some patients that stabilized. So again, this as an exploratory objective, this was really just trying to get a sense of if there's any possibility for some change here, but really not statistically significant. But it does look encouraging at this time, again, as we would not expect improvement, and we would be happy with stabilization as well over a period of a year. Next slide. So overall, the Rainbow study really showed an excellent safety profile, and very importantly, there were no GI adverse effects, no diarrhea, bloating, pain, etc., that we know can occur with miglustat in many patients. It appears to be well tolerated. It's an oral formulation. It does have a confirmed impact on the enzyme, the GCS enzyme that was identified in the mechanism of action. An optimal dose was identified based on these preliminary data. And we do know that, of course, not all the patients received what we consider the optimal dose. They received the lower dose, but there were still some patients, even in that dose range, that had encouraging clinical outcome. And again, as mentioned, we'll need more data on disease biomarkers. Next. So now to discuss the current, soon to open Navigate phase 3 trial. So phase 3 trial is designed to be much larger, enroll more patients, tends to be longer than phase 1 and phase 2 trials. And in addition to looking at safety and some of the parameters with pharmacokinetics as well as the biomarkers, pharmacodynamics, it's also powered to look at clinical outcomes. There will be an umbrella protocol here that's developed, an identical protocol, but 2 independent studies that will run in parallel. One that will enroll patients with NPC, and the other that will enroll patients with GM1 or GM2. And most clinicians that take care of one take care of the other. So we imagine that at the sites that they'll be open, patients will be able to go on to either of these protocols. And it just makes it simpler for administration and monitoring to have one protocol that's the same. However, these sub-studies will be run and analyzed separately, and one will not necessarily impact the other. Next slide, please. This is what the study design looks like. So patients with GM1 or GM2 will be screened, and we'll be looking at the entry criteria and exclusion criteria, as well as their general well-being. There are then baseline studies that are done. Now, the screening and the baseline can be done together to make it efficient. Then at this time, after they come on registered on the study, there's a randomization and it's done 2 to 1 for every 2 patients that go on the drug. 1 will be on placebo. This will be double blinded, so we know that neither the investigator or the patient and family will know which drug they've been randomized to receive. There will be clinical assessments done in 1 month, and then at month 3, and then every 3 months through the end of the study, which is 18 months in duration. Patients can continue after that to go on to open label and continue to have periodic clinical assessments. At that time as well, patients that were on the placebo will go into open label and receive the drug. And presumably they'll continue on open label until all patients have completed the study and there's a period of time of analysis and a submission to regulators. And the next slide. It is anticipated that 75 patients will be enrolled. Again, mentioned this is a placebo-controlled study. And for approximately 50 patients that receive the drug, 25 will receive placebo. So the dose is going to be adjusted to body weight. So even though it may look like there are 3 different doses, patients will get the same approximate dose when you consider their body size. So it'll be 3 milligrams, 6 milligrams, or 9 milligrams. Next slide, please. Patients and families must be able to provide written informed consent, which can be either by the participant, parent, or legal guardian. They must have a confirmed diagnosis of GM1 gangliosidosis or Tay-Sachs, Sandhoff, or GM2 AB variant disease. That's based on confirmation from enzymatic tests, identification of 2 pathogenic variants, or 1 pathogenic variant plus what's called a VUS, a variant of unknown significance, but it's a mutation basically in the same chromosome, in the same location, but it hasn't previously been identified as being that disease. And it's just because it may just be a newer mutation. So it can be a variant, a VUS, and confirmation with low enzyme activity. Patients must be at least 4 years of age, and there's no upper limit of age. Onset of neurologic symptoms between 1 and 10 years of age. And the SARA study will be done, or SARA assessment will be done at baseline and calculated. And a very low score is minimal symptoms, and high scores are very symptomatic. But patients must have a score of at least 3, but be less than 30. And the reason for this is that the trial does not want to enter on very severely affected patients who are not likely to have benefit, nor will they want patients that are progressing so slowly that we won't be able to determine if indeed they're having a clinical change over the 18-month period. Next slide, please. So these are some of the exclusion criteria. So as I mentioned, they must be, their well-being must be good. So there should not be any medical conditions such as severe liver or kidney disease that can interfere with any interpretation of the results or performing the study assessments. Patients must be able to participate in all of the study assessments. A body weight under 10 kilos is not allowed, and that's because of the formulation of the drug and the lower dose. But again, we don't anticipate patients being this small under when they're 4 years of age and older. If they have seizures, they must be on stable seizure medications and not be in the process of changing either the dose or the drugs. So once they're stable, they can come on to the study. They can't be receiving another investigational study, participating in a clinical trial with an experimental drug at the time of or in less than 3 months. But if they were on it 4 months ago, then they've had a good washout period and they can come on to the trial. Also, use of miglustat is prohibited. Next slide for more discussion about that. So miglustat has a very similar mechanism of action to nisobaglustat, so we don't want patients to be on both drugs because it would be confusing to understand which drug may be having the impact. Patients, however, can be considered for enrollment if they're on a subtherapeutic dose of miglustat for 6 months or longer, and their clinician or investigator considers that the treatment has really not been effective. Patients can be on some newly approved drugs. So this is more specific to NPC, Echinirsa and Miplyffa, though I know that there are some patients certainly looking at Echinirsa, but the indication now is an NPC. It's not approved in all countries, only approved in the US at this time. But if there are approved drugs that are considered standard of care, they can be on these drugs if they've been on them at least 3 months. And supplemental medications, including Tanganil, cannabinoids, and curcumin, amongst others, are allowed as long as the PI is aware and can report on that. And again, stable doses for at least 3 months before the study and during study. Next. So at this time, there are 4 centers that are participating in an initial submission in the US, in California, Minnesota, Texas, and Virginia, potentially more US centers in 2026. And this is an international trial, so there will be patients enrolled in a number of clinical sites in various countries, including Latin America and Europe and Australia. And the plan at this time is to start before the end of 2025, hopefully by the fall or maybe even late summer. Next slide, please. So I'm happy to take questions. And just for clarity, Christine and Kathleen, are all the questions in the Q&A that are visible to me are okay to start answering? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, great. So with regards to the criteria of onset of neurologic symptoms, before age 10. Okay, so we know that there's no upper age of participation. And so that can get confusing for our adult patients who may have been living with GM1 or GM2 for a long time. But the study specifically does state symptom onset before age 10, again, because of the concern that later onset of symptoms may correlate with a much slower progressing disease, and we may not be able to determine if indeed the patient would have progressed in the way that they, what would their natural history be compared to what is it with the drug. So hopefully that's clear, but we are, if not, I'm happy to address any other questions about that.
So that was in the chat, and I think, Caroline, there was more in the Q&A. So maybe if I can go through them.
Okay,
Rachel,
Q&A. Okay.
So Rachel has asked, is the drug supposed to be only for children? GM1, late onset Tay-Sachs, adult send-off. I think you have gone through that, but maybe
Yeah. So I think you asked that before we actually started up, but before we got to that point. But yes, there is no upper age limit. Again, just as long as they meet all of the entry criteria and don't have any of the exclusion criteria. Is a study available in California? Yes. I'm located in the Bay Area, and that's where I will be opening the site in California. It's possible other sites in California will open up, but I know that that's one with certainty. We hope to be one of the first places open. Will Ecnersa be allowed only for NPC or also for GM2? That I might ask Aidan to address, because obviously the indication is NPC.
Yeah, well, currently Ecnersa is approved only for Niemann-Pick C. Although we know from conversations that some patients can access it. If you are taking it, if you have been prescribed it, then and for a stable dose, then that's acceptable. Then you can come on if you have either GM and are receiving Ecnersa. And the rationale for that is that it has as you've described, it has a different mode of action. And therefore, if you're on a stable dose, you will have had the impact at baseline, and the study then taking nisubaglestat will show a difference with the addition of nisubaglestat, and your Ecnersa effect will be taken into account with the baseline study.
Okay, so the answer is yes, as long as you meet the criteria as stipulated for other drugs, that you're on a stable dose for 3 months and you intend to stay on it for the duration of the study. Aidan, I might have you help me with some of these.
Yeah.
I can ask, is there any known impact on blood glucose levels? Not that I'm aware of.
No, and looking at our safety database, we haven't seen any impact on blood glucose levels specifically. That said, we've had relatively low patient numbers so far treated in the Rainbow study, but they've been on it for, some of the patients have been on for over 18 months. So, and we are monitoring blood glucose levels during the study. So we have not seen any impact on blood glucose levels during the Rainbow study. In fact, during the whole development program.
Great. And what is the difference between this new drug and miglustat? Well, there's mechanistically, but I think clinically is very important, in which we know that one of the most detrimental effects of miglustat for many people has been the effect on the GI tract, the development of diarrhea, weight loss, malnutrition that can come with that, plus the discomfort, the urgency, especially if you have you're challenged with ambulation. And also, another adverse event of miglustat are tremors. This is not thought to have any impact there. Mechanistically, they're both inhibitors of glucosyl-ceramide synthase, so there is an overlap there. With the second hypothetical impact on the NG non-lysosomal glucosylceramidase, which is an anti-inflammatory impact potentially, then their miglustat is not known to have that. You may want to.
And yeah, there's some other ones in terms of the dosing and the potency of the drug and the potential of crossing blood-brain barrier and where the effect is. So, you know, there are similarities, but there are differences. So yes, they both block GCS as you've described, but there are, as you say, the disaccharidases, which are affected by miglustat, are not affected by nizubeglustat. And yeah, so there are some similarities, but we feel the differences are, you know, important enough to want to develop a new version of this type of molecule.
Great. Do you plan to open phase 3 in Poland?
Currently, Poland is not on the list of sites. We did reach out to a number of physicians in Poland, and unfortunately, they didn't feel they had enough patients with the condition of the right type that they would be able to enroll significant numbers of patients. We are looking to open sites in Germany. I appreciate that's not Poland, but it's relatively close. And you know, we will be supporting patients who need to travel to sites from outside countries and certainly within countries. So if you were a patient living in Poland who meets the criteria, you know, some of the physicians in Poland have, you know, we're in contact with, and we've discussed the trial, and they'll be aware of the trial, and we can, you know, consider enrolling at other centers in other countries if that's something that could happen.
My daughter's 2 years old. Can she receive medication outside of the trial?
So, as in the protocol, no, unfortunately, the patients need to be at least 4 years old for the consistency of the cohort so that we have the best chance of showing a clinical benefit. We are aware, and we've had a number of people asking whether I think many people call it a compassionate use or a other extended access program would be available. And absolutely, this is something that we would be considering once we've been able to show in the Navigate study that the drug has a positive effect and maintains its risk-benefit balance that we believe it has. And so, yeah, but unfortunately at the moment we don't have that data, and it's not something that I think we should be offering, because the risks to the actual development program are too great, and you know, we need to show it has a benefit before we can expand the access to other groups outside the current protocol.
I have a comment here, yes or no. I'm so lost. I think this was the question regarding children and adults. So yes, children and adults can receive this as long as they meet all the entry criteria, which means they had at least some of their first symptoms before age 10, and they meet all the criteria. And that's for GM1, GM2, Sandhoff. That's for all of the disease states.
Yeah, it's slightly different for Niemann-Pick C. So the
Niemann-Pick C is up to age 15.
2 and 15.
Right. Would a child who's turning 4 during the trial be eligible if they fit all the other requirements? I think kind of adding on to what we just heard with the 2-year-old, you do need to be age 4 at the time of coming onto the baseline.
But to say that the recruitment period, the time that we expect to need to take to recruit all of the 75 patients would be probably a year and maybe a little bit longer, and will obviously continue until we get all 75. So if a child were 3.5 now, they would potentially be, you know, there'll be 4 in 6 months, and you know, then they would be able to meet the criteria and come in.
Yeah, and remember, the trial may not be open for another few months as well.
Yeah, so yeah.
So there's that time. Is there any issue if my child takes venglustat for compassionate use? I mean, this is an experimental drug.
Yeah. I
So,
think so. So it's not approved, it's not licensed, so that would
yeah,
be caught by that.
so it fits into the exclusion
criteria.
criteria, unfortunately. So that would be, they can't be on both, is the answer to that. When will the trial start? How long will it last? So we hope in the next couple months.
Well, in the US, we hope in the next couple of months. We have a site open in Portugal, and they're planning on screening their first patient in the next couple of weeks.
Wonderful. Great.
Yeah, we're all very excited for that to happen.
Yeah.
And all the sites across many countries, across other parts of the world, will be, we're working with a contract research organization partner who's, got multiple people in many countries who are starting up the sites as quickly as possible.
And it takes many months, unfortunately, to start up at each site. So it's a lot of negotiations and oversight. So it doesn't just happen overnight, unfortunately. And then the trial is 18 months in length once you come on with that open label extension. Will the study ever open to younger patients, say 2 years old, and especially if over 10 kilos?
So we hope so. Many people will be aware that in Europe there's a part of the regulatory authority called PEDCO, which is the pediatric part of the regulator, and they're very keen that we expand the trial, and anyone that's developing a drug for conditions that affect children will open it to all patients who are potentially impacted by the disease. We have been in conversations with them, and we are working with them to come up with a design that's acceptable and that's likely to benefit the patients who are younger. At the moment, our protocol is what the protocol is. That was agreed with the regulators, but do keep you know do keep an eye on things, because we're moving to try and incorporate other age groups as much and as quickly as we can. But at the moment, unfortunately, the age group is over 4.
Clinicaltrials.gov does not list Texas as a site. Are there still plans for location in Texas? The answer is yes. Can I say where in Texas? Is that?
I'm sure. Yeah. It's
in Dallas.
It's
going to be in Dallas. So that I don't know personally what that timing is, but hopefully still within this year as well, hopefully in the next few months.
I think I would be hopeful for that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
We know that they're working very hard to get the internal processes signed off and everything done.
Yes.
So
when will you try? I think this is a repeat, but we can readdress. When will you try the study for children under 4 years? If my son can swallow well, but is only 1 year and 10 months, can you participate? So I think, as already said, we because of the safety issues and already the regulatory requirements, they will need to be at least 4 years of age. Is gene therapy an exclusion criteria? Well, I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to turn that to Aidan.
So it's recent gene therapy would be an exclusion criteria, because the impact of gene therapy is expected to be much longer term than in other experimental drugs. So we've, as Caroline has mentioned, the exclusion criteria for if you're on an experimental drug is the 3-month washout, which is quite a standard for a tablet. But a gene therapy is expected to have much longer time frame of benefit, and yeah, so if you've had recent gene therapy, but as far as we're aware, there haven't been any recent gene therapy studies. We know of some that have been maybe 4 years ago. So a patient who has been on the gene therapy
Yeah, 3 year, maybe
Yeah.
2.5, 3 years, I think was maybe
Yeah.
the last
So,
patient.
so
But
patients who've been on that study would be okay to come onto this because it's long enough away that
a wash
we
on.
expect to
Okay.
have been able to see the benefit of the gene therapy during that time.
Okay.
So how many years? 4 years if they were dosed 4 years ago?
Yeah, that would be fine. I think it's a year,
Oh,
if I
it's
remember.
only 1 year if they were dosed 1 year ago?
Yeah. But I don't think there has been any gene therapy studies that we're open.
Oh no, NIH is still dosing.
Are they? Okay. Wasn't aware. But
Yeah, there were two other study groups, that one that stopped and the other that's going to be reopening under a different company, I think soon.
so,
Are there any enrollment barriers with my daughter being a type 1 diabetic? It's well managed. So in the exclusion criteria, it just said, you know, medical problems that really could lead to the interference or interruption, or preclude the assessments, or whether they be, you know, laboratory or clinical. So if she is well managed and the your physician, as well as the investigator that you're going to work with on the study, feel that she's safe and stable, then yes, she would be able to participate.
and just again to reiterate, there doesn't appear to be any impact of nizobaglistat on blood sugars, so we're not aware of any adverse events in that respect. So it wouldn't be something that would be harmful to a diabetic.
If we live in Florida, will we be able to participate? Will there be a lot of traveling? So yes, if you live anywhere in the US, you can certainly participate. And as of now, we know 4 sites. There may be others, but you can certainly travel to those. With regard to a lot of traveling, I think it depends on how you define a lot. We can certainly do the screening and the baseline assessments together, likely a couple of days. And then because this is orally administered, you will be administering this at home. There are set times to come back for assessments at 1 month, month 3, which will be 2 months later, and then every 3 months. So at some point, you know, it'll be 4 times a year, really. So I think it's hopefully it's doable for most people. We do understand that most people will actually be traveling. It's not likely that patients are from the city where the study is open, given the rarity of the disease. Next, so there will be 2-to-1 randomized. Every 2 kids get some sort of medicine, normal or high dose, and 1 get placebo. Will the kid getting placebo keep getting placebo, even if there's a clear sign that medicine is improving, and 1 with placebo getting worse? So there's 2 parts to this question. So there's only 1 dose level, but it's based on your weight. So unlike the rainbow, which patients got 9 milligrams and the low dose was 3, this will be dependent on your size, and it could change during the course of the study if your child is growing and kind of crosses over the criteria for the next dose. What we want is the dose to be approximately the same for patients based on their weight. As far as patients that are getting placebo, so we will be submitting the clinical assessments, and there'll probably be a data safety monitoring committee for the clinical trial that will be looking at that in a more unblinded way, because we, the investigator and the family, don't know if you're on placebo or drug. So if you're getting worse, we don't know if you're getting worse despite the drug, or you're getting worse because you're not on the drug. Ethically speaking, if the data and safety monitoring committee sees some significant difference between placebo and drug, they are obligated to stop the study. So we don't, you know, if we know with certainty that that's happening, they can't continue. But there has to be some period of time to be certain about that, and enough patients on the study as well to have that certainty.
And just before we did the Rainbow study, we did a study we called Pronto, which was a natural history study of just following patients with the condition without any active drug. And we certainly saw decline over a 1-year period, but there was variability. And as we all know, most patients with these conditions are not the same as everyone else. There's no, so the agencies are very keen that we prove that the disease is ameliorated by the drug, and that unfortunately means that some patients will be taking placebo, and we need enough patients showing that they're stable and enough patients on drug showing that they're improving to be able to convince the regulators that the drug is actually having a benefit. And that's I'm afraid the answer about placebo is not something that I can do anything about. It's something that the FDA has been very keen on for many years. And despite multiple conversations between ourselves and the agency, between our doctors and the agency, they're still very wedded to the placebo-controlled study, even in rare diseases. But we can only do what we can do.
Is the new trial listed at clinicaltrials.gov?
I know that the submission, there's a big document that we have to fill in to submit to clinicaltrials.gov. It is being discussed as we speak, and we want to get it up on there as soon as possible, because we know it's a good place for patients and their families to see information about trials. And so if it's not up this week, then
it is up. It is up.
It is up.
So is that the final version?
The clinicaltrials.gov submission is a living document. It's not fixed. So we will continually update that information as things change.
I assume as the sites open up too, that'll get updated. The next is, I have 2 children with juvenile Tay-Sachs, 6-year-old boy, 4-year-old girl. The boy has symptoms. The girl is just starting to show symptoms. What's the next step? So I think the next step is, I don't know where you live, to determine where the site will be that's closest to you. And if in the US, then it'll be in one of those 4 states as mentioned. And on the clinicaltrials.gov website, there will be contact information there. Usually you just contact the site directly, and then we try to be really good about getting back to you within 24 hours. And I usually like to have a conversation with the family and or referring physician in advance so that everybody's really clear about what the study entails, including inclusion and exclusion criteria. So before we arrange to have you come out, that it's looking highly likely that you would be able to participate in the study. The next is, how frequently be patients required to have on-site visits? Would the on-site visit just be 1 day or an extended stay? So in that slide where I showed you the trial design, there are assessments that are done as part of the screening and baseline. Many of those overlap. They can be done together, especially if there's a conversation in advance to be clear about exclusion and inclusion criteria, because it's really when you're on site and you don't meet those criteria that you can't continue. But we could likely figure that out a lot in advance. Performing the SARA assessment is done in person. But again, just going through some of the history, we might be able to have a reasonable estimate. And it's also possible that your clinician has done that test, so we'd have an estimate as well. But it will be the actual physical exam, the clinical assessments that are required by the study, and some laboratory studies that will be done. And we can likely schedule most of these in 1 to 2 days, and then there's also the travel time that needs to be factored in. And as mentioned, the travel is covered for you, and there will be somebody that assists you specifically with that, so that we can get you from where you live all the way to the site safely and as quickly as possible.
And just to say, as we've been discussing, I think I mentioned that the site in Portugal is looking to screen their first patient. We're very much aware that we don't want to rush. There's quite a few assessments. They sometimes take a little while to do, and we have to be mindful that we don't want to try and force them all to be done within a very short period of time, because patients will be tired and they'll be irritable because they're being forced to do all these questionnaires, and therefore it might be you get the wrong result. So this was something that the investigator in Portugal asked, and said, can we do it over an extended period? And that's, of course, we want it done relatively soon together, but we appreciate, and as Caroline's just said, we'll schedule the visits so that the assessments can be done in a reasonable time frame, and not to be overstressing either the families, so we get abnormal results or other results.
So in the frequency, as mentioned, you can do the initial assessments all together and then start the study, come back 1 month later, 2 months again after that, and then every 3 months. And next is, there are little to no options for young children. Why are kids under 4 excluded? This could make all the difference for some kids' lives. And I think we're very aware of that, and it's not fully in the hands of the study developers. It is really regulatory requirements in which it must be proved safe first in this age range, and kids 4 and above, before taking it down to younger children.
And as Caroline's explained, our Rainbow study was in age 12 and above, and that's because we only had data in adults until that point. So I think we've been able to show our safety profile in adults, and then we've been able to show it now in adolescents, which is enabling us with the work that we've done to go into younger children. But there's a lot more complexity with regards to dosing, to assessments, to formulation. If it was going to be easy to recruit down to age 0, we would have done it, and we would have tried to get in as many patients as possible with all age ranges. But we are not trying to. We haven't designed this to exclude anyone. But there are a number of parameters which are causing us a lot of anxiety with regards to with age and heterogeneity of populations, and we're very sorry that we have to have a lower age limit, but they are really in order to have a best chance of showing a benefit in the shortest possible time.
It seems that the entry requirement for GM2 patients to have had symptoms prior to age 10 will eliminate almost all late onset Tay-Sachs and late onset Sandhoff patients. What symptoms are being considered? It's a neurologic symptom, so it really could be any symptoms, whether they be mild or otherwise. I don't think there are any specific ones that are being targeted, and the investigator can then just report if there are any symptoms.
But to say that if you have an onset of neurological symptoms, as an adult, again, we've discussed this a number of times, the progression of those symptoms is likely to be much slower than if the patients were younger, and that's why, again, we're not doing it deliberately to exclude them. And I think as a number of conditions like this will show, that we will be able to show a benefit in the cohort that we are doing. And then once that has been shown and proved, then it's much more likely that patients in age groups outside this range will be able to come on to an extended study or to further studies or to just receive access because of we've been able to show the benefit in this cohort.
Is Boston a likely site?
Like, as we said earlier, we've discussed with a number of sites across the country. We've tried to go with the initial bunch that are sort of split across the country to reduce the potential for travel time. So we've got some in the north, some in, we've got Virginia as a site that's very soon to be open. We've got Texas, we've got California, and we've got Minnesota. It's difficult for us, a relatively small company, to open sites everywhere. This is a big expense and a big cost in terms of effort to open lots of sites. So the closest one to you in Boston is Virginia, or potentially Minnesota. So at the Mayo in Minnesota are the ones that are likely to open first.
Who should we contact about signing our son? I think our neurologist is also willing to contact. And again, that would be the open sites closest to you, ideally. And that information should be on clinicaltrials.gov. If not there now, then soon as sites open up. I'm assuming on clinicaltrials.gov, there's also a contact for the company directly that you can probably also inquire with.
And if you do that, then we will try and point you in the direction of the site closest to you.
How confident are you in this drug? That's a complex question. Of course, we want to be very confident. I mean, every time I think a phase 3 clinical trial is developed, it's based on what we consider promising outcomes, based on it being safe and relatively easy to take, tolerable, but also there has been preclinical or animal or laboratory studies that have looked at its mechanism of action and given really positive signals that it's working the way we think it's going to work. But every species is different. It has to be proven in humans. And the only way to do so is with this study. We also know that, we do have another drug, but there are significant problems with it that make it difficult for many people to use. And we hope that this new drug will also make this type of mechanism of action drug more accessible to everybody. Aidan, I don't know if you want to answer.
Yeah, just to add a little bit, we present our data at every stage, at the beginning to show that it's, as you say, that the animal models have shown that that it has a good safety profile, and then we test in healthy volunteers, and once, just every step, the data is reviewed by independent people, not just us. So you don't have to take our word for it, but this has been approved for use by, the protocol has been approved by the FDA and by EMA and other health authorities across the world. It was approved by the Indian Health Authority. We've got approvals. We're moving ahead with Australia and sites in Europe and things. So multiple people have looked at the data that we've presented so far and have been and have agreed that it's reasonable to continue to do it. And we're seeing, as Caroline said, early clinical signs, not statistically significant just because of the number of patients, but I mean, this is one reason why they have doctors in drug companies. I don't want this drug to be given to somebody if it's has the potential to do them more harm than good. And so we're very, we believe in it. We think we've seen enough signals to say that we should go ahead to a phase 3 clinical trial. But it's a trial. It's not, and once we get through the trial, if the trial shows it's got benefit, then we'll get it to the market and get it in front of people. if it doesn't show a benefit, then then we should take it off and try and do something else.
If a patient is placed on placebo, they'll receive the active drug starting month 19. Will they be able to access it beyond month 24? So yes, when you go on open label, you stay on it or have the option to stay on it as a minimum through the duration that everybody on the study finishes the treatment. So if this study is open recruiting for 1, 2, 3 years, there may be patients that are halfway or even completed the study when others may be coming on. So there's that period of time. And then there's the period of time after which the study is fully enrolled, where the data is analyzed and it's taken to the regulators. That process can be 6 months, a year, 2 years. It can be long. So, but yes, ethically speaking, the drug is, patients are that have committed to participating in the trial and contributed significantly are given that continued access. And the last question I have, does this drug have the potential to be life-saving? We hope so. I mean, the intent of the drug is to reduce or possibly stabilize the development of symptoms or progression of the disease. And it will take many years to see what impact that has on longevity. As an example, I think it was after using miglustat for 10, 12 years before it was very clear that there was impact on longevity. That's really hard to look at it in a short period of time as far as that outcome. Do you have any other comment you want to make on either of those questions?
Yeah.
There was a question from a Brazilian mother who asked where are the sites in Brazil and when will they open?
So we have sites in Sao Paulo and Rio, and I think they're the two that I'm aware of that are going to be first. We're working with the teams there to open them as as quickly as possible. It's the same sites that are working currently with the Rainbow study. But yeah, Sao Paulo and Rio. We're also looking at other site further north, but I know that we haven't finalized the contract negotiations with that site. But given Brazil is such a large country, we're trying to make that site available as well.
Well, I think that this was an extremely informative webinar for our patient communities. And so, Drs. Gill and Dr. Hastings, we thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. Certainly, if anyone has follow-up questions, they can reach out to either the Cure GM1 Foundation or NTSAD, or even to the email address that was shared at the beginning of the webinar, as well as the contact information on clinicaltrials.gov. And we will do our best to support you. Thank you all very much for your time this evening.
Oh, I just had one tiny thing, but I just felt it was really important to clarify the SARA score in general. That range of the SARA score, does that imply that the people are ambulatory?
Yes.
Well, on the higher end, they may not be. It just depends on which components of the SARA score are higher, right? Or they may be, or may be in a wheelchair, but have the ability to transfer, etc.
But we have other assessments which sort of do imply that they can walk the timed up and go. We have and
metered test.
The stand, the ability to stand. At the beginning, that would if you were fully wheelchair bound at the moment, then I think that would probably be captured by the unable to conduct all of the study assessments at the moment. And I think, looking at the way that the disease progresses, somebody in a wheelchair currently would be unlikely we would be unlikely to be able to show a benefit. It's I'm afraid I don't have the confidence that we can make people walk again if they've lost the ability to walk. And showing stability in that instance, is not a great study outcome, I don't think. So yeah, they have to be able to do all the study conduct, and I think if you're fully wheelchair bound at the moment, that's somebody who would not be expected to be coming into the study.
Thank you for answering that. Sorry to add on there. Thank you so much to everyone for attending and taking this time. This is an exciting moment for our community and also disappointing for families, I'm sure, who are asking the questions about the criteria. And we really hope that the study goes well and as quickly as possible so that treatment can reach as many people as possible in the future. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.